Hello, I'm making this video today because I would like to share with you the process that I went through learning how to fly in a lucid dream. Now, this is not a tutorial on how to lucid dream. There are already a bunch of those on YouTube, and I don't really have anything to add to them. But this is mostly for if you have begun lucid dreaming, but you're having trouble for whatever reason initiating flight. And if you don't want to watch this video, you just want a takeaway point, it's start jumping, okay? Start playing around with jumping in a dream. I'll go into a little more detail on how this worked for me. Now, the first dream that I can remember flying, I was very young, probably 5 or 6 years old, and this was a non-lucid dream, so I did not feel like I was necessarily controlling myself, but I ended up flying in it. And I was in an army on this battlefield, and we were against this army of evil alien robots or something like that, but we were losing, okay? So we needed to escape. The problem was we were backed up against this cliff. The cliff was very tall and there was no way to climb up it. So I'm looking at the cliff, I'm like, I need to get away right now. And somehow I get the idea in the dream, okay, what if I start flapping my arms back and forth? Maybe I'll float. And I did. I floated up the side of the cliff, made it to the top. Now, it was many years after this that I actually got conscious control of movement in a dream, but it did open up the idea that flight in a dream is possible. So throughout my late childhood, early adolescence, I had a series of dreams which I'll call the jumping dreams. And looking back on them, I didn't know what a lucid dream was at the time, but I was in control of my movements. I decided what to do, but I never actually called it a dream when I was in the dream. So I don't know what you want to call them, maybe a semi-lucid dream or something like that. I don't know. And these would always begin, I'm outside walking, and I just have the idea, let's start jumping and see what happens, you know. So if you're at the point where you're lucid dreaming, start off, baby steps. I have an idea that the main obstacle to flying is fear, And it's not necessarily fear you're aware of, it's fear in your subconscious that you can bring up and deal with in these experiences. So I started off kind of playing around with jumping. How did it feel in the dream? And you'll notice once you start this that it feels differently. You can slow it down, you can pay attention to the feeling of going up and down, okay? After you get a little comfortable with the sensation of it, start playing around with how high can I jump? When I did this, I found I could jump very high, and there was really no limitation. Now, when you're first starting out, take it slow. Don't push yourself too far because then you'll activate a fear response and probably wake up. Okay. So when you're comfortable with a little bit of height, now start messing around with the timing of it. Okay, can I slow down in certain parts of the jump? I found that I could jump up and linger at the top for a while. Just kind of sit there for a little bit before I came back down. Once you start doing this, then ask yourself the question, do I really need to land? Okay? And you'll find you don't, Once I got to the point where I could hold it there, I found I didn't have to land. Okay, so get comfortable with that sensation, and then start thinking, okay, if I'm up here, just kind of sitting there, can I move around a little bit? And you'll find you can, and this is levitation. This is levitating in a dream, floating around, interacting with your environment. From that point to actual flying, and really the only distinction is, okay, if you're levitating, you're just a little bit off the ground. If you're flying, then you're way up in the sky and stuff. The jump from levitating to flying is quick. It's easy, once you're comfortable with it. So that's my main advice on that, and that's how I learned to fly in a lucid dream, is just very baby steps, one thing at a time, get comfortable with it, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, you're off, and it's fun, right? At this point, I'm so used to flying in lucid dreams that I kind of take it for granted. I just like, that's how you move in these experiences. So I'm not so wrapped up in the actual sensation of flying. I'm mostly focused on, okay, what am I looking at? What is this thing? You know, more interacting with the actual dream itself rather than just the sensation of flying. So those are my main tips. If you're having a lot of trouble, I talk about in other videos where I have interactions with guides, whatever you want to call them, dream guides, spirit guides, angels, guardians, you know, whatever. And I've caught glimpses of them, I've heard their voice, I feel their presence, so I know, I have an idea that they're always there. So one thing, and this isn't just for flying, if you're having trouble with anything in a lucid dream, ask for help. You know, that's what they're there for. You might not be aware of the help they give, and it might not be in the form that you expect, but it'll be there, okay? So those are my main tips on learning to fly in a lucid dream. I do want to share 2 experiences that I had where it was almost like I was the teacher in the dream, and so they're kind of fun. One of them was about 10 years ago, and I was in a room with a large group of people. It was a relatively small room and at least 20 people, so it's kind of tight quarters. And they're all looking at me, and I get the impression that I'm supposed to teach them how to fly. I don't know how exactly this was supposed to be possible because there was a ceiling and there wasn't a lot of room, but I did start levitating a little bit, floating around. So I showed them a little bit. I don't remember anybody actually doing it after I did it, but there was another character in the dream who it was actually somebody I recognized from real life. And they grabbed my leg, pulled me down, and they're like, "Stop that, you're gonna hurt yourself." And I was I was angry. I was like, "What is wrong with you? I'm fine. I do this all the time." And so then I start kind of teasing him. I jump up onto the wall where my feet are touching the wall and my body sticking out horizontally. And I start running around the room like, you know. So that was fun. And the other dream I had was a couple years back, maybe about 3 years back. Started out in a non-lucid dream. And I'm in an urban environment. There are lots of like apartment complexes, condos around me. It looks like I live in Dallas, so it looks like the West Village area, if anybody knows what that looks like. And I end up in the apartment of an African-American couple who are making love. Okay, I was non-lucid, so I don't know how I got there or anything like that. And somehow I end up like in between them. Like the woman was on top, the man's lying on the bed. Somehow I end up in between them. I don't feel like I'm partaking necessarily, I just end up there. And I'm looking into the eyes of the African-American guy and they flash in light. Kind of weird. I've had a couple lucid dreams that start off with a dream character looking at me and their eyes flash. I don't know what that means, but it triggers lucidity right away. So I become lucid in the dream, and I leave them alone. I'm like, okay, you're making love, let me go. So I just kind of float around the streets, and I don't see anybody at first. I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing? Finally, I see in front of me a woman walking across my path. She doesn't look at me, so I don't think she necessarily noticed me. And I actually recognized her from real life as well. It was a teacher I had about 5 years ago. In real life, I think she was in her early 40s. In this dream, she looked young, like early 20s, and she was not wearing glasses, right? Whatever that means. And I'm looking at her, and I send her this message, I guess telepathically, I don't really know. And it was just, why don't you try flying? And she doesn't look at me, she looks up into the sky and takes off, starts floating up in the air. And I was so happy, I was just like, yay! It was a really nice feeling. So I just thought I would share those experiences with you, and hopefully this has been helpful. Again, if you're having trouble flying in a lucid dream, start off jumping. Okay?